The golem pointed its sharp claws at them and jumped down to attack them, but he just said that it was pitiful and told them that they had chosen the wrong target. Circles appeared on his shield spell, and he used his flame blast to attack the golems. The force of his attack got out of the ship, making a huge hole in it. Then he flew out of the hole. He told Arsha that they should go, to which she replied, yes. On the other hand, inside the ship, one of the enemies told his captain that it wasn't right, and they had to back off, making the captain's enemy wonder how when they should have been done by now according to the plan. Suddenly, huge explosions appeared near them, throwing the enemy with the monsters away, and the captain's enemy was furiously sweating in pain. Then, shouting, he asked why is that kind of monster hiding in the Lawrence family. He flies closer to his enemy while attacking them with his magic, and Arsha was in the front, busy attacking the monsters. The captain's enemy heard his people shouting that they couldn't run away to kill the Archmage because he was interfering with their teleportation. The other replied they couldn't because there was an aura master next to him before shouting in pain. The captain's enemy was going nuts because of the situation they were in and thought that the Archmage was not enough, but there was even an aura master. Then the captain's enemy ran away while shouting to his people that they were all on their own now, getting Adrian and Arsha's attention. A moment later, he used his magic power to stun the captain's enemy on the floor while Arsha was running toward him. Arsha cut the captain's enemy's hand, making him shout in pain. She swung her sword backward and attacked the captain and was close to beheading the captain's enemy. But then Adrian told her to wait and not to kill that guy, so she stopped in time before her blade cut off the captain's enemy's head. He got down on the ship to walk closer to the man and told him that there was no use trying to escape, making the captain's enemy wonder if they were completely annihilated because he thought it was impossible. He was about to suggest to the captain's enemy, how about we help each other? But then he noticed the captain's enemy doing something and shouted to Arsha to stop the man while running toward them. When Arsha checked the captain's enemy's pulse, she told him that he was dead, and it looks like he chewed the poison hidden in his molar teeth. Adrian was amazed to think that it was really how the assassins died because he thought it would only happen in novels. Since he didn't have a lot of experience dealing with assassins, he took their determination lightly. Then he heard the vanguards noisily behind him, asking Billiam if he was already aware of it and begging Billiam to say something. Billiam opened his helmet and told the vanguards that Adrian is Duke Riverdale's disciple, making the vanguards shocked. The vanguards panikedly told Billiam that Adrian must have been under strict surveillance all this time, and what is more, Adrian usually played games all the time. Billiam replied that Adrian was able to train without any restrictions in the virtual world. Adrian said that his teachings were conducted between reality and virtual reality, so the theory classes are also available online. Yet they didn't even know it, and not just them, but everyone in the family looked down on Adrian. Billiam also told them that they all know how amazing Duke Riverdale was, but he thinks Adrian was able to become like him because he was special, the young genius of Viscount Lawrence. It was said that Viscount Lawrence had lost his intelligence after taking poison but had been making plans for the future while lowering himself and deceiving everyone around him to survive. Billiam told everyone that the tide had turned, and surely they were not thinking of dying on a sinking ship. Adrian noticed that Billiam was pretty good at influencing others, and Billiam told everyone that they would arrive at the estate soon, so they should behave themselves so as not to be a nuisance to Adrian, to which they all replied, yes. Later, Sylvia, crying, ran toward him and hugged him tightly, asking if he was alright and if he wasn't hurt anywhere. He told his mother to calm down because he was alright. Rayford told him that he had worked hard, and he thanked his father for the compliment. But he knew that in any case, it was totally normal to hold a parade in celebration of him receiving the medal on the battlefield. But it was too quiet. Rayford apologized to him because he should have given him a grand welcome, and he told his father that he was okay because he was not into noisy events anyway. But he thinks it must have been Anna and Cedric's doing because who would bother to hold a parade for someone who was going to die anyway? Rayford told him that in exchange for it, they had prepared a grand banquet, so they should celebrate his return with eating and drinking. But he just looked up and saw his fortress in energy-saving mode, making him smile. Inside their mansion, there were a swarm of different dishes on the table, and Billiam, Harmon, and others told him that it was their greatest honor to fight alongside him. Harmon bowed his head to him and told him that he was able to come back alive thanks to him, making his father tell him that he had learned how to win people's hearts on the battlefield. Suddenly, he heard Cedric shudderingly call his name in anger and saw that he was with Anna and others. He bowed his head to them and told them that it had been 3 months since they last saw each other, making Cedric have no other choice but to welcome him back. But he noticed that Anna looked like she'd seen a ghost. More importantly, he noticed the guy behind Anna and wondered what was up with him because he saw that the man's name is Morris Gusher, and his condition was relief and joy. He heard that Morris had been working as Anna's right hand for over 30 years, yet he had a favorable impression of him. He thought that if he could convince Morris, he should prove to be quite useful. But then, he saw someone walking toward him. He noticed that the man was Commander Crone, who was an aura expert too, with doubt and distrust conditions. As he expected from a knight commander, his specs are excellent. Still, he couldn't believe that his characteristic is authority-based management, not combat ability. He knows that Anna and Cedric aren't even worth looking at, and it angers him that he was fooled by those individuals. But Cedric told him that as someone who carried the last name of their family, he has done quite a good job. Even though it was not that big of a deal, he should still compliment him. He just smiled, thinking that they were full of bullshit. He'd love to send their heads flying right now, but he was going to find some justification first. Those bastards have made him suffer so much that he wouldn't simply grant them a clean death. He was going to push them into a swamp so deep that they can't ever escape from and strangle them when they are in despair. Cedric asks him if it feels good to be complimented and calls him a crude person. He asks Cedric if he really thinks he'd be happy hearing his praises, knowing that it doesn't mean he is going to tolerate all of Cedric's actions because it would make him too much of a pushover. Then he told Cedric what he meant. It was just ridiculous how he was talking as if he was capable of doing anything, making Cedric shocked. What he wants is to create an atmosphere and use it as his justification. A justification that they deserve to face consequences. So he tells Cedric that if he had led those people to the battlefield, they would have been completely wiped out. He has already imagined him ignoring tactics and getting himself killed after charging forward recklessly. Cedric calls him a bastard and asks him how dare he. But he just continues by asking Cedric if shouldn't people know how to use their heads more as they get older. He told him that to think he is naive enough to regard his smile as him being happy is the reason why his vassals call him a moron and an imbecile, making Cedric's face turn red in shyness and anger. When Cedric was about to tell him something, he cut him off, acting like he remembered something, and asked Cedric if could it be that his ignorance came from his maternal side. Suddenly, a glass of wine falls to the ground because the waiter accidentally tripped, making the tension even darker. Anna was on the brink of anger, but he playfully said to Anna that if she had something to say, she should say it directly and stop pretending to be elegant because it doesn't suit her. Suddenly, Cedric burst into laughter, which shocked everyone. Cedric drew his sword while telling him that he had become even ruder after returning from the battlefield and that he didn't even know what fear was anymore while pointing his sword at him. Sylvia fearfully told them that Adrian must be tired after coming back from the battlefield and looks tired, so for now, they should take that sword away. Then Rayford shouted at Cedric, asking him what he was doing on such a happy occasion and if he wasn't going to put that sword down immediately. But Adrian just apologized to his father because he needed him to keep quiet and watch. Cedric moved closer to them while saying that he had manipulated Adrian and he understood why he suddenly acted this way. It must be due to that rebel's instigation. Then Cedric angrily asked how dare he try to overthrow their family and told Billiam that he must be out of his mind, making Billiam shocked and pointing at himself to ask Adrian if it was him. But Adrian shook his head no. Cedric still told Billiam that he persuaded Adrian to try to break the family apart. Anna, who is acting, said that it was absurd and asked Billiam if it was true. But Adrian knew that they were the ones being absurd, and he couldn't believe that they would interpret his intentions that way. Cedric ordered the knights to capture the rebel Billiam immediately, but no one obeyed his order, and their surroundings were just quiet. Cedric asked the knights what they were doing and told them to hurry up and carry out his order. One of the knights told Cedric that if he wanted to capture Vice Commander Billiam, he should do it himself, making Cedric shy and angrily asking the knight named Berto what he was saying while Adrian tried to hold his laughter. Hearing his laughter, Cedric's surroundings turned black, and he snapped in anger and shyness at the same time. So he ran forward to attack Cedric with his blade, shocking everyone. But then someone grabbed Cedric's hand, and it was Arsha, who was busy eating a huge chicken. He furiously asked what was with her and told her to let him go while wondering how she was so strong. When Cedric was about to tell her to let him go again, she hit his face with chicken, making him collapse and slowly fall down. Anna, Crone, Billiam, Rayford, and Sylvia were shocked to see it. But Adrian was watching in joy. Then Cedric fell to the ground, making everyone silent. He looked at Cedric with a smile, thinking that after Cedric acted all proud, he ended up being grabbed and beaten with a turkey leg by a woman half his size. Crone walked forward and told them to stop because it was enough. Then Crone drew his sword and told him that he kept crossing a line he shouldn't cross. He thought the knight commander should draw his sword, as if he were protecting the king as a royal guard. He asked Crone if he wasn't the one crossing the line right now. Then he told Crone that Cedric had done so many things over time that he couldn't even remember, or he simply had no shame. This made Cedric angrily ask Crone what he was doing and shout that those people dared to harm him, so they deserved to be killed. Crone told Cedric that, of course, they must die, and Cedric shouted in agreement. But Crone then told Cedric that, as a vassal, he couldn't harm the second young master, who is a member of the Lord's family. This made Cedric furious. However, Crone pointed his sword at Arsha, who was peacefully eating the turkey leg, and said that it was a different story with her. There was no room for consideration for a commoner who dared to raise her hand against a noble, so he would proceed directly to judgment without a trial. Crone raised his sword and asked Arsha if she thought she was a noble just because she was a noble's lover. But when he was about to strike her, Billiam and the other vanguards pointed their swords at Crone. Crone asked Billiam what he was doing and told him to step back immediately, but Billiam said that he wouldn't have drawn his sword if he was going to back off at Crone's words. He warned Crone to step away from Lady Arsha immediately. Crone asked if he said Lady Arsha and found it strange because he could see people from Cedric's faction too. Also, most of those individuals would prioritize profit over loyalty. He wondered why even such cunning individuals were willing to follow Adrian, making him think that something didn't seem right. Then, a lot of knights appeared, and Cedric immediately ran toward his mother. He noticed that reinforcements were there and wondered why Anna, who had always been sensitive when it came to Cedric, was so quiet and if she had gathered the knights over the phone. Cedric teasingly told him that there was no use in regretting now, and including Billiam, all of them will be thoroughly punished for their crimes. He furiously told the knights that they were in the presence of the Lord and asked them how dare the knights of the Viscount stand on the opposite side of their Lord. But Cedric just ordered the knights to subdue those troublemakers immediately. Then the knights ran forward and pointed their weapons at them, making him realize that in terms of numbers, their expeditionary forces had more soldiers, but they were not armed properly. Whereas Cedric's faction had more than 10 armed soldiers, and their equipment was overwhelmingly better. So if a full-scale battle broke out, it would be a one-sided slaughter. Suddenly, Crone asked him why he did such a useless thing and told him that it seemed like he was still drunk on his victory, forgetting his position. Then, he told him that his family's system could not be changed, and because of his recklessness, the only people who ended up seeing blood were those guys. Also, he wouldn't be killed immediately. However, even if he lives, only hell awaits him, a life that is even worse than it is now, but he just keeps quiet. Rayford shouted at him to use the artifact while Sylvia was apologizing in fear. Cedric teasingly told him to run away no matter what. Crone told the knights on their side to be ready to attack, which the knights pointed their weapons at them, but he just called them foolish individuals. He told the knights on their side that they were rebelling, and those troublemakers were trying to harm the Lord, so they should protect the Lord, and the knights replied yes immediately. This made Crone wonder what the hell those guys were doing. He told Crone that anyone could tell the ones committing treason were them, and they should put an end to that boring act. Then he removed the illusion magic and ordered Arsha to bring those 3 to him and take care of the rest, to which Arsha replied yes and disappeared. Then Anna and Cedric were shocked to see the knights surrounding them being killed rapidly. Also, the knights behind Crone were easily killed without a trace of who the killer was, making him fearfully confused. Suddenly, Adrian appeared behind Crone and asked him what he had just said to him. Then, he slapped his staff on Crone's face while calling Crone a traitor and told him that he required discipline. Crone shook in fear, knowing that it was impossible. Then he noticed that the woman just now is an aura master and wondered if that game junkie, Adrian, just deals damage to him. Crone shouted to his people that Arsha was an aura master and ordered them to get into a formation centered around the armed knights and face her. Also, they should keep calm and be able to deal with her. Adrian told Crone that he couldn't believe that he still managed to give instructions to his subordinates in the midst of all of it. But he expected it from a knight commander like him, even though it was not going to change anything. Crone asked him what the hell he was, but he just asked Crone what he meant when he was a teacher who would teach them a valuable life lesson while increasing his agility, physical strength, mana, and defense. Crone knows that wizards can use magic 2 classes lower than their level without casting, which means that if they are a 7th circle wizard, they can use 5th circle magic without any casting, and a skill that proves their existence as an archmage, the skill that allows them to overwhelm the wizard killer, Vanguard. So the moment they become archmages, the so-called weakness of a wizard almost disappears. Adrian used his memorized cast saved magic and attacked Crone with his flame blast, making Crone shout in pain. After that, he walked closer in front of Cedric and Anna, who fell to the ground in shock. He told them that he thinks they will have a lot of fun from now on and asked them if they don't think so, while Crone attacked him from behind. Crone, who was burning, called him a bastard, but he just moved to the side to avoid Crone's attack. He told Crone that he should have stayed on the ground and asked him why he got up, making Crone look at him in anger. Anna and Cedric shook in fear when they saw him attack Crone. Then Crone fell to the ground toasted. They both wondered how it could be and how Adrian Lawrence could become an archmage, but he just smiled at them, making them realize that they were screwed. Later, in another mansion, a man angrily slammed his hand on the table, and Anna's father, Raven Margrave, furiously asked how that bastard Adrian dared. The men showed Raven what happened at Adrian's mansion using a device, which made Raven furiously ask, "What the heck is this?" One of the men explained that the video is constantly spreading on various portals and platforms. By tomorrow, most people will become aware of the situation. and some even speculate that Cedric Lawrence and Anna Lawrence's acts of treason were done with his support. Raven told them that the things those commoners say in the virtual world don't mean much, but the man informed him that even among the nobles, some support those speculations. Raven arrogantly asked the man, "So what?" He told them that the best those people could do was file a few complaints. Raven thought that, no matter how valuable an Archmage and an Aura Master are, winning a war can't be done with just one or two superhumans. What's more, helping those two means opposing him, who possesses military power equal to that of a Duke and Marquis combined. He knows it would be troublesome if someone of his title, a Duke or a Marquis, sided with Adrian, but that is highly unlikely since they are the ones who would least welcome the emergence of a new rival. The man told him that the royal family may intervene. Raven replied, "It's obvious because a young Archmage and an Aura Master would draw people's attention." However, he added, only if it was the truth, making the man shocked and confused. He told the man that they can just turn those two into swindlers, and as long as no one believes they are an Archmage and an Aura Master, there will be no problem. He asked the man if there was any guarantee that it wasn't an artificially created video in this age and time. Then he suggested, "We can just announce our position like saying the video was fabricated." But the man warned him that once they had it authenticated, it would be over. Still, he insisted that they can take care of it before they have the video authenticated. He furiously told them that through that video, they were exposing that he was behind Anna and Cedric, and those commoners were acting exactly as they wanted them to. They were only trying to get a justification, and what they truly aim for is war. The man fearfully replied that it was impossible and asked if they were out of their minds, wondering if they were thinking of picking a fight with the Margrave. But he just asked the man how much their Margrave forces could be mobilized in a territorial war. One of the men replied that it was about half of their total forces. For their territory, they can mobilize 3 sky fortresses and 150 vanguards, or 2 sky fortresses and 200 vanguards. He asked what forces could be mobilized right now, and one of the men replied, 200 vanguards and 1 sky fortress. He told them that it was enough and wondered how a brat who is still wet behind the ears dares to provoke him. Then he declared to everyone, "It's war, and I will make Adrian regret it." Meanwhile, in Adrian's mansion, he scratches his ears, thinking they must have checked the video they released by now and are preparing to attack because his ears are itchy. So, they must be talking about him. He knows the relationship between Anna, Cedric, and Raven Margrave is inseparable. His blade of revenge is only complete when it reaches Raven Margrave. However, to solidify his position, there are conditions that must be met in advance. The lady introduced herself to him as the daughter of Kyne Riverdale, Olivia Riverdale. He knows that Duchess Olivia is an Archmage belonging to the Lewis Kingdom, and she was the daughter of the famous Duke Kyne Riverdale. While she is said to be the closest to the 8th circle among the Archmages in the Lewis Kingdom, her existence is equal to that of the patriarch of the Riverdale family, to which the 6 Archmages belong. Unlike him, who gained strength through lucky encounters, Olivia is a true genius who reached the 7th circle at the age of 22. She gave the ID to the men with her and told them that it looks real to her. Then the other men told her that it definitely seemed real, making him exhale in relief and ask her if it meant that they had acknowledged it. But she told him that, however, she was only saying it looked real, as it's completely possible to forge that platinum plaque in the first place. She attacked him with strong pressure, making the glass on the table shatter into pieces. He notices that they are putting pressure on him by resonating with each other's circles, making him feel heavy and in pain. So, he uses his magic power to make them stop, making Olivia surprised. He angrily asks them what the meaning of it is, but she just told him that it was incredible, while the men were cheering for him. She told him that it was nothing much and they just wanted to test his skills while recovering the shattered glass cup. But he told her that surely she would have been able to check it without resorting to something like this. She told him that having 7 circles doesn't mean everyone is the same, and she just wanted to measure his exact level. He thinks although Olivia looks delicate, her methods are quite tough, and he asks her if he has earned her acknowledgement now. She told him that she still had many questions, but there was no reason to turn away a genius Archmage who claimed to be her father's disciple and was helping her family expand their influence. He notices that Olivia doesn't care much about whether or not he is real, and he feels like she is just welcoming another Archmage. This makes him think that she has a sensible way of thinking, and he asks her what if he turns out to be a bad guy who will cause her family to suffer losses. She told him that turning their family into his enemy is no different from asking for death, and she doubts anyone can afford it. Also, they have already confirmed his identity because they don't take in just anyone. This makes him smile and think that since he has received their recognition, there is no reason to argue anymore. Then he told them that he'd like to make a request. The next day, Raven asks his butler how much longer it will take to deploy the troops. The butler replies that it will take at least 1 more hour. Raven asks if it can't be a little faster. However, a panicked man calls him from behind and tells him to take a look at that video. This makes Raven angry and he asks what is it this time. He then sees Olivia in the video, announcing that she'd like to make an announcement today. She officially announces that the young Master Adrian Lawrence, a disciple of the former Duke of Riverdale, became an Archmage of the 7th Circle at the age of 20. She also tells everyone that Adrian is a rare magic genius and a talent expected to achieve the 8th Circle. Riverdale will do their best to assist Adrian and spare no effort to support his growth. Raven realizes that Adrian is already 1 step ahead, as if Adrian had read his thoughts. The butler tells him that he can't believe Riverdale would appear, and at that rate, the royal family will undoubtedly intervene. But Raven is more upset to hear Olivia saying that if anyone tries to harm Adrian, they at Riverdale will take it as an act of antagonization against them. Raven furiously slams the video device on the ground and catches his breath for a moment. Then he tells his men that they are moving as scheduled. The butler asks him what he said, but he just asks his butler if he didn't hear him and tells him that they'll be moving as planned. The butler tries to remind him about the royal family, but he cuts his butler's words by asking what about them and if they catch up on their expedition and order them not to attack Lauren's territory. The butler tells him that it's not about that, but the risks are too high. Still, Raven tells him that it's fine as long as they achieve their goal and they can overcome it no matter what. The butler tells him that Riverdale is behind Adrian, so he thinks they should stop their expedition. But Raven angrily tells his butler that it doesn't matter because they are foreigners anyway, and moreover, he's sure Adrian will be relieved that they won't be able to attack him, so their surprise attack will be even more effective now. Then he orders his people that they have to finish the preparations and deploy their troops as soon as possible and asks if they understand it, not noticing Crowy on top of them. The butler replies that he understands, and they will speed everything up even more. But with a shared vision of Crowy and him, he sees his enemy's every movement. Before the video, Olivia asks him if he wants her to hold a press conference and if that's really all he's asking for. He replies that it's correct. She tells him that she understands the situation he's in and that if he wishes, she could provide further support for him as a fellow disciple. But he tells her that she just needs to reveal that he is the former Duke of Riverdale's disciple and an Archmage, and that he doesn't need anything else. This makes her confused, and she asks him why. He smiles, remembering it, stands up, and tells Arsha that it's time for them to go. He thinks that when it comes to exacting revenge, he doesn't want to rely on anyone else's help. He wonders if revenge is for the sake of self-satisfaction, so he knows that everything must be done according to his plan and under his leadership. Those guys are his prey, so he doesn't want to share the joy of hunting them with others. On the other hand, Adrian's men is in underground. The knights were panicking and shouting that the prisoners had escaped. The knights ran around searching for them, asking if there were still people following those two after all that happened. They shouted that they could still be hiding in there, so they should search carefully, and he'll go up and ask for help. Without noticing, Anna sneaked behind them, walked upstairs with Cedric and another man while holding a key in her hand. The Sky Fortress slowly got closer to the mansion, and Anna, Cedric, and the other men rushed up toward it. Anna told them that it was the same as dead living it, and her father won't leave them be. Cedric asked her if she was really doing it, and she furiously asked him what else she was going to do when they couldn't live like this. To which he replied that she was right, and she told him to shut up and keep up. A minute later, they arrived at the top, and then she looked up and saw the Sky Fortress. She raised her key in front of it, and the system asked her if she would like to enter the Sky Fortress, to which she replied, entered, and they were all summoned and transported inside. She immediately took off her coat and swore that she'll make sure Adrian dies. Then she furiously asked Adrian if he thought she'd stay down and told him that she can destroy him and the Viscounty with that Sky Fortress. Then she entered her key and told it her name, making it verify everything completely. The system asked her if she was trying to activate the Sky Fortress under threat because its biorhythm was unstable at the moment, to which she replied, no, and it verified her answer. The system showed her that Sky Fortress Janet activation was complete and welcomed her as admin. She immediately ordered it to prepare the main cannon Firestorm, target Viscounty, and fire as soon as possible. But then Adrian covered her mouth in time to avoid it. He told her that she acted perfectly as he predicted and thanked her for unlocking the security for Sky Fortress, making her panic and wonder when Adrian got in. Then she heard her men being dragged and Cedric being beaten up easily by Arsha. Adrian told her that attempting to shoot Viscounty with Sky Fortress, her crimes just kept on stacking, and that Raven Margrave's troops were almost there. So, she and his brother will have to protect that land with their own bodies. He also told her that it was what he wanted to see and that if she is guilty, she is supposed to be anxious, and asked her if she thinks criminals can be proud. Then he threw her away on the floor and told her that there were too many security measures in the Sky Fortress, but she did a good job unlocking them, and now he can do what he wants. She told him that she was not sure what he was trying to do, but they should calm down and talk because she thinks they were all heated. However, he just clicked the Sky Fortress systems, knowing that he was not the one who tried to blow up the Viscounty. She orders Arsha to stop hitting Cedric and drags him over there, to which Arsha replies yes immediately. Then she throws Cedric next to Anna. Cedric asks him what he's doing when they are brothers, but he just tells Cedric that they are brothers in his ass. Then he uses his great shield to lock them. Arsha asks him what they should do about the knights, and the knights tell him that they have committed a crime deserving of death, but beg him to have mercy on them. He tells them that they seem like Raven Margrave's people, so he'll send them there. Suddenly, the ground beneath the knights collapses, and they all fall out of the Sky Fortress while he's telling them that they should have the honor of becoming fertilizer for Earldom Raven. Then he tells Arsha that he forgot to upload the video and orders her to edit the video for him. She walks toward him and asks him if he's going to upload more videos. He replies yes and tells her that it's not a bad idea while Cedric and Anna are trying to escape on his shield. Then he tells her that he's going to use the media platform for political purposes. Meanwhile, in Raven's mansion, he sees the news of Anna and Cedric stealing the Sky Fortress and trying to kill Viscounty Lawrence. Then he sees one of the comments that he forcefully sold the retiring Sky Fortress to Lawrence's family and gave the admin authority to his daughter, which means it's all his fault. After reading it, he asks his butler if he can kill every commenter who commented on it, and his butler replies that it's possible but won't be easy. The website is under Elysia Union's jurisdiction, and they don't reveal users' personal information unless it's for a serious crime. He angrily says that those Elysia folks are stubborn. Then his butler calls him to report that one Sky Fortress and 200 vanguards are all ready to be deployed. He tells the captain that he better not fail, and the captain replies that he'll keep it in mind. Then he angrily orders them to move forward. The mages begin to use their teleportation magic circle to teleport the vanguards and Sky Fortress. Slowly, they disappear, leaving him with his butler and men behind. He thinks he should have gone there himself, but Anna, who is trapped inside the shield, shouts at his father not to come. A minute later, a circle of mana teleportation appears above Anna's Sky Fortress, and he feels it, shouting that they are there. Then he orders to start the mana surge, making the fortress release an electric power. Cedric, crying, asks him if he can hear him and apologizes to him, then begs him to forgive him and Anna. She shouts at him, asking what he's doing. He replies that he's using what he learned from the war and tells her that it's called a suicide bomb. Anna and Cedric are shocked. He says goodbye to them teasingly while raising his glass of wine, and a huge explosion like fireworks can be seen in the sky while he peacefully drinks his wine. He thinks some might say revenge is meaningless, but he totally disagrees because alcohol never tasted so sweet like that. Then he tells Arsha that they should make a wish. Arsha asks him what wish, and he replies that they are supposed to make a wish while watching fireworks. The date is August 15, 2019, in the age of magic. He has erased Anna and Cedric, who have been causing him trouble in that world, and now he has earned his absolute freedom. Meanwhile, in Raven's mansion, Raven and his men were silent in the room, waiting for updates on their troops. He angrily asks them why on earth he can't reach them and if the operation isn't supposed to be finished already. One of the men starts suggesting it might be a communication failure, and the other replies that they must have contacted them through personal devices. Then another asks if it's because the large-scale teleportation was carried out too hastily and if he means a space disconnection, as it might be the case. He asks them about the spies they previously planted, and the man replies that they haven't been able to get in touch with any of them, considering the fact that it happened right after those individuals took Anna into custody. He suspects the information has been identified and the spies arrested. He furiously asks the man if he's kidding him, but the man replies that if it's not the case, he can't think of any other possibilities. Perhaps the whole situation was planned in advance, making him angry and wondering since when it was all planned. He also thinks if it's true, he wonders if he has been played by a brat who is his grandson's age. Then he tells them that apart from the Lord's castle, at least one person must be in contact with them in a regular residential area. One of the men replies that perhaps it was the effect of the space disconnection, but there was no connection to the general communication either. Suddenly, a man panicky calls him and tells him that he was looking for online articles related to Lawrence's territory, and the article was posted 3 minutes ago. Then he sees a video of a huge explosion and vanguards protecting the place. The vanguards are attacking their fortress that was transported to the place, making them explode one by one and shatter into pieces. The room is silent as they watch the scene, and his butler explains to him that according to the article posted along with the video, an evacuation advisory was issued about an hour ago, and all residents of Viscounty Lawrence were evacuated. It also said that while the communication was completely cut off, a huge explosion suddenly occurred in the sky. They have confirmed that the communication was restored a while ago, and there was also an announcement released from the Lord's castle. This makes him snap in anger, and he destroys his table using only one hand, shocking and stunning his men. Then he throws a vase near him and his chair at the men. He silently looks at them for a moment and asks how many additional troops can be deployed right now. One of the men replies that 75 vanguards or 25 vanguards and 1 sky fortress can be deployed, and any number beyond that would violate the law. He knows that if the previously dispatched troops had the strength equal to 5 sky fortresses, they must now have the strength of only 1.5. Judging from the video, it's clear that Adrian sacrificed his sky fortress to carry out a suicide bombing attack. So, no matter how old the sky fortress of Lawrence's estate is, there's no way their forces would be intact if they got swept away from close range by a suicide bombing using a surge of mana. This only means one thing: Adrian was perfectly aware of their movements. However, he thinks Adrian still can't do the same thing twice since they no longer have a sky fortress to blow up. The man tells him that unfortunately, that number is not enough to overwhelm the power of Viscounty Lawrence, and an emergency message has just arrived from the royal family stating that the use of force against the Viscounty of Lawrence is prohibited. This shocks him, but then he laughs loudly, making his men fearful. He asks if it's the price he has to pay for looking down on that bastard. He thinks it's possible to recover from the damage, but they won't be able to do it right away. It costs around 15 trillion to build 1 sky fortress and at least 50 billion for 1 set of Vanguard Force equipment. So, they need as much as 30 trillion for damage recovery alone. He can't believe that the power of their family, developed for generations, has collapsed due to a small mistake. He asks his man if he said that communication with Viscounty Lawrence has been restored. To which the man replies yes. Then he orders the man to get him on the phone with Adrian immediately. The Black Eagle is the same as Arsha, a supporter, but its basic method of use is completely different. While Arsha is a multi-purpose existence like a human being, the Black Eagle is an auxiliary supporter strictly focused on support. Its first skill is shared vision, which helps him a lot. He tells Raven that he can't believe he would be shameless enough to call him, and Raven acknowledges his ability because his trick worked well this time. However, Raven warns him not to think his luck will continue next time. He tells Raven not to worry because his revenge will only be complete with his death and the fall of his family. Raven asks him what he means by revenge, and he tells Raven that he may not know it, but because Anna and his elder brother Cedric loved the Sky Fortress so much, he let them stay inside. He bets they must have been satisfied, as he even held such an expensive cremation ceremony for them. Raven told him that just because his strategy worked once, he no longer knew how scary that world could be. But he responded by saying he didn't know about anything else, he simply wasn't scared of Raven. Raven vowed that he would never forget today's humiliation and would definitely pay him back 1,000 times. This made him smile, hearing how Raven only gets mad at insults directed at himself. He guessed that Raven must have put Anna and Cedric's death behind him, making him seriously think that those two were so pitiful. After acting so proud, in the end, it seemed they were nothing but tools. Then he asked Raven if he was currently on the 80th floor of the Lord's castle, and Raven asked him what he meant. He told Raven that he had prepared a present for him, and it should have arrived by now, while Crowley was outside near the castle. He asked Raven if he had heard about memorization magic and explained that it was a magic skill to avoid casting time, and allowed him to store 10 magic spells at once. He asked Raven what it would be like to have 10 7th circle magic spells memorized, which are cast at once, and if he thought it could even break through the Raven Lord's castle shield that he had been so proud of. Then Raven saw Crowley in front of them with 10 circles of magic, leaving him and his men open-mouthed in shock. He told Raven that the present he sent him was 10 rounds of 7th circle magic blaze blast. Crowley swung its wings forward, releasing the magic circles and attacking the castle. He laughed heartily while hearing the men panicking, telling Raven that the barrier of the Lord's castle was on the verge of breaking and begging Raven to use blink or teleport to quickly get out of there. Then he heard Raven angrily shouting his name, but he teasingly told Raven that he would pray for his safety and hung up the call, excusing himself. He stood up when Billiam called him and reported that, as he ordered, they had gathered the reporters in the conference hall. A moment later, the maid who was whispering behind his back before was fearfully bowing their heads to him as he walked past them. He looked at one of the servants and remembered that among the maids and servants of the Lord's castle, there was no one who hadn't looked down on him. He walked past the servants and maids trembling in fear, thinking it was funny how they were all afraid of him. He knew it was time for him to say goodbye to his past of playing a dumbass because the second act of his splendid life had begun. In the news, it was reported that young Master Adrian Lawrence held a conference about the Sky Fortress suicide attack incident. It was revealed that Raven Margrave secretly deployed 1 Sky Fortress and 200 vanguards, all of which turned into ash in a split second. Some blamed Adrian for copying the tactic used in the war with the Croatian Empire, while others acknowledged that this was the result of great predictions and information warfare. Adrian emphasized that none of this would have happened if Raven Margrave had not planned his malicious attack, stating that he did what he had to do to protect his land. Raven Margrave's castle collapsed, and Raven survived but took massive damage from an unexpected counterattack. The most prominent headline was young prodigy Adrian Lawrence shuts down Raven Margrave. The post asked viewers for their thoughts on the news, and the commentators shared various opinions. Some believed that the Sky Fortress and someone else's Viscount deserved defeat, while others praised Adrian's intelligence and saw this as a new era for the Reinhardt kingdom. There were also those who viewed it as a typical noble family feud and more. He smiled as he read the comments, thanking everyone for their support and expressing his gratitude. He told them that he would never forget it, and this made him excited as he realized he had reached 1 million followers in just a day, becoming an influencer. Billiam expressed his concern about people blaming Adrian for bringing down a renowned noble, but Adrian dismissed it, saying that he wasn't backing down anymore. Billiam remembered that Adrian had lived his whole life being suppressed, but now he seemed determined to take control of his destiny. Adrian noticed that the Raven Margrave incident had caused controversy both within and outside the country, with articles criticizing him as well. However, despite the Raven family's solid reputation, public opinion was biased in his favor, leading even those on the neutral side to join his cause. It was as if the entire nation was on his side, and public opinion was in his favor. Adrian knew that commoners were essentially slaves to nobles, but he felt different because he could benefit from the people's support. He has to prove himself that he is different from those people, and he'll do it by constantly communicating with them. He thinks discrimination toward commoners from nobles is a structural problem in Rondel, not because commoners are worse than them, and most of the talented people he found were commoners too. Suddenly, Rayford called him and told him that an order to appear came for him, making him shocked. Then he read that Arsha Klein ordered him to present himself at the Board of Inspection, making him notice that it was short but forceful. He can think of 3 things from it. First, Raven Margrave's play. Second, High Nobles' plan to tame them. And third, the Royal Council's plan to tame them because he knows that they wouldn't send an order if they wanted to be friends with them. Billiam asks him if he has a plan, and he replies, of course. Then he asked his father what he thought nobles liked the most, and his father replied, money. He told them that he agreed with it and that he was going to change their opinion with money, so many nobles would be interested, even the royals. Rayford told him that he would like to have more explanation on his plan, and he replied that he earned some money from investing, so if he paid tax on that money, it would surely change their minds. His father asked him if he meant covering the issue with another issue, and he replied, yes. His father and Billiam were silent to hear his words, making him notice that they don't seem to be happy about it, but he thinks it was better to show than talk and shows his balance of loot, making them all shocked. Billiam excitedly shouted that it was amazing and couldn't believe that it was what grand wizards do as their hobby, and asked him how he could collect 60 billion loots. But he told Billiam to look carefully because there were 4 commas, not 3, making Billiam confused and unable to believe that he had 60 trillion loots. He told them that he got lucky, but Billiam panicky asked him if he saw the future or if he was reincarnated, but he just told Billiam that it was a funny joke. His father told him that they would go crazy. He asked Rayford how much he thinks the tax would be, and Rayford replied that at least 1/5 of it would be tax. He thinks if it was 1/5, then it was 12 trillion, and told them that he heard if a noble pays a hefty amount as tax, the Royal Guild will grant tax exemption. Rayford replied it was right, and that if he used merchants that the royal family operated, he would get tax-free on half of the tax he was paying, making him think it was good because he already planned on using some money, and he'll give to use 1/5 after all. Rayford asks him if he has something else he wants to buy, and he replies, yes. Then he told his father that he was getting more Sky Fortress and Vanguards. The next day, the reporter told the news that Adrian Lawrence had finished reporting taxes for the money he earned from investing, and that amount of money he earned is said to be 60 trillion, which shook the noble society. Meanwhile, Otis was happily laughing and told his family that Adrian, the crazy man, sure knows how to surprise people. His wife asks him if Adrian is the staff member he told her about, and Otis replies yes, but he can't call him his staff anymore since Adrian will be getting the title of a Grand Wizard for reaching the 7th circle. Otis told his wife that he wanted Michelle to get to know Adrian, but he became too big of a person within a few days. His wife asks him if he can't still make something happen because she would love Adrian as her son-in-law. Suddenly, someone slammed a hand on the table, and Michelle told her parents that Adrian's face was her type. But she didn't want to be a person who benefits from a partner because she was going to earn her authority on her own. Her mother asks her how, and she replies that it'll be easy once she finds Archduke Manuel Lucas's fate. Her mother pulled her ears while angrily asking her if she's still not over it and when she's going to grow up. But she told her mother that it was possible. Then, Otis made a sound like he realized something, making his wife and daughter stop and ask him why. He replied that it all makes sense if Adrian is the one who found Archduke Lucas's fate, and Adrian's boldness all makes sense too. Michelle told her father that the Riverdale family accepted Adrian as one of them, but he told them that it was perfect for Adrian since he doesn't have a strong presence and he can hide under the Riverdale family because Adrian is the type of person capable of perfectly hiding himself until he reaches the Lord Wizard status. Michelle told her father that the Royal Guild also confirmed that all of Adrian's money came from investing, and he replied that maybe there was a deal between the Riverdale family and Reinhardt royals. She asks her father if he likes conspiracy theory novels. But then the reporter says that there's breaking news, and the public priest just announced that they found Manuel Lucas's lucky encounter, making Michelle angrily shocked. Meanwhile, in Manuel Lucas's tower, Adrian says that it would be so much easier if he could just absorb research books like the skill books because he knows that tomorrow he needs to attend an inspection with Arsha, and then the day after that he should attend a party held by the royals. Another day after that, he needs to go look for sky fortresses and Vanguard gears, so he can't stop leaving because he's busy, so he logs in every second he gets. Then he throws the books next to the other books he has done reading and goes to the shelves to get more books, knowing that there is less than 1% of military research in those thousands of books of research. The weapon Archduke Lucas invented changed the way of war, but still, Lucas is against war. Also, the research Lucas spent most of his time on is dimension teleportation. He knows that Lucas never married, never had a disciple, and spent his entire life researching his way back home, so everyone says that Lucas is the one who changed the world. But the truth is that Lucas missed home. The reason why Lucas left traces showing he is from Earth is probably to meet someone from his home, but sadly, it happened after he passed away, and Lucas's legacy became his hope. He wanted to go back too, but he was not dying to go back because he didn't have the ability, and his mother was there, so he guessed it'd be cool if he could wander around two worlds. He wonders if maybe Lucas wanted someone else to finish his research, and maybe Lucas wants him to go back because Lucas couldn't. He told Lucas that if it was what he wanted, he would try his best. Chester tells him that he knows how to respect, and he replies that he is just a normal person, so he thinks his reaction is normal, making Chester say that he is a humble man. He told Chester that he was going to look for him since he had a question, and Chester told him to go ahead. He asks Chester if they won't catch them laundering money, and Chester replies that there is a slight chance, then explains to him that if they look for every single investor in that entire world and combine them all, they will see there is more money than actual trades, making him relieved knowing that no one would do it. He thinks it is a good idea to cover the Raven Margrave incident with money, but there is too much attention on him because he was the 7th Circle Grand Wizard, and has Arsha, who was an Aura Master. So if anyone finds out he was the one who found Manuel Lucas's fate, there is a higher chance of him losing what he has, so he plans to make sure to keep it a secret. He told Chester that it was just his confirmation and he'll ask his actual question, knowing that he thought of a plan, and it was a fake lucky encounter. Then he asks Chester how the fake lucky encounter operation is going. Meanwhile, outside, people were cheering for Louis Fairmont and calling him the Prius Republic's national hero. A swarm of people filled the streets, cheering for him while in the top of the car and had a lot of bodyguards in the side. He waves his hand to all of his supporters. Louis Fairmont, the fake lucky encounter possessor, smiled while telling everyone on his mind to keep cheering for him because he was their savior. Louis was 29 years old that year. He was an intelligence agent for the Prius Republic and the son of President Cartro. He is the second-generation tycoon who shamelessly takes advantage of his father's name. The fake lucky encounter possessor's operation is to make someone act like the possessor of Archmage Manuel Lucas's lucky encounter and divert the world's attention away from Adrian. Through that operation, Adrian can shake off any doubts people may have about him and gain some time until he reaches the 9th Circle. He tells Chester that although he doesn't feel sorry at all for putting a bomb in Louis's hands, it bothers him to leave Archmage Manuel Lucas's name to someone like Louis. Chester told him that there was no helping it and he wasn't strong enough to protect the lucky encounter on his own yet, so he thinks it was a smart response. He knows that the Prius Republic is considered one of Rondel's 4 major empires, and it is almost the only country that advocates democracy and elects its president. But in reality, corruption and collusion between politics and businesses are fundamental, and prosecutors and the media are the government's tools. So it is no different from a dictatorship in which the president has been in power for as long as 14 years. He asks Chester if it will increase President Cartro's approval rating even further, and Chester replies that it is possible, but the situation in the county would not have changed whether or not the news about the lucky encounter existed. He told Chester that other than Louis and Cartreau, he hoped that no one else would become a victim of that incident. But Chester told him that sadly, a diplomatic war involving many countries would begin, so it would be difficult to avoid damage. Still, when the bomb named the fake Lucky Encounter possessor explodes, it'll be difficult for Louis and the president to be safe. In the long run, his action will likely bring about change in the corrupt Fairmont regime. When they take the future of that country's citizens into consideration, it was a very good operation. He told Chester that in the event innocent victims arose because of that operation and asked Chester if he could identify them. Chester told him that originally he would have said no, but he would accept his request this time since the reason he had to go that far was because of their lack of consideration. He can't believe that Chester readily accepted it even though he asked him just in case and asked Chester what he meant by a lack of consideration when it was not the case at all. But Chester told him that still, that is truly unexpected. To think that he cares this much about other people's lives. Then Chester asks him if he didn't burn down Anna, Cedric, and Raven Margrave's force without hesitation, and he replies that it was because they were his enemies, which is a different story. Chester told him that it was a good mindset to have, and they must prevent innocent casualties while showing no mercy to their enemies, making him think that in times like this, Chester seems just like a human, not an artificial being. He wonders if he will be able to create beings like Arsha or Chester just like Archmage Lucas when he achieves the 9th circle. Chester told him that he still had one last administrator privilege left and asked him if he didn't want to use it yet. He replied not yet and that he would save the last one in case of an emergency. He told Arsha and Crowy that they should go hunting while thinking that he was currently level 205, and it looked like it would take a while until he reached level 250, the first condition of the 8th Lucky Encounter quest. The next day, in Lawrence's mansion, the servant asks his friend if they heard that Adrian said he is planning to purchase 5 sky fortresses this time. His friend asked the servant back if it was possible when the maximum number of sky fortresses a Viscount and Baron can possess is limited to 1. But the servant called his friend an idiot and told him that Adrian must have made that plan while keeping in mind the fact that he and Arsha would be bestowed the Earl's title. The knight told the other knight that Adrian even planned to meet the military limits of Vanguard force equipment. Then the maid asks the head maid if it is okay for one family to have so many lords, and the head maid replies, of course, since the titles were given based on their merit, and asks what they are going to do if those kinds of talents move to a neighboring country because they were treated poorly. The head maid also told the maid that Adrian is not just a new great noble in name but someone who will be equipped with corresponding military capability. In other words, there is a new power in the Reinhardt kingdom. The conversation of the maid was interrupted when they heard a jingle sound. One of the maids told the others to wait and that they should pause their conversation. One of the maids asked her why, and she replied that Arsha had just called, so she had to go quickly. The other maids asked her what she was talking about when it was her turn this time, and the other maid wanted to go too. But the maid who was walking first told the others that there was no chance, and she was in charge of Arsha today. She walked with the trolley of food, feeling angry about how the other maids had crossed their senior, because most of the servants working at the Lord's castle were from Anna's side. Now that Anna has passed away, they feel like they are walking on thin ice every day. Although the people of the Lawrence family don't want to see their young master's face because they committed many sins against him, they don't want to quit their jobs that have a good working environment and a guaranteed future. As a result, they argue with each other to see who could come and serve Arsha, which was relatively less burdensome. The maid put the pancake on the table and shyly looked at Arsha, knowing that, contrary to Arsha's fearsome or a master's title, she has a gentle personality and often shows a soft smile. The maid looked at Arsha, thinking that Arsha came from the same commoner background as she did, but it's truly incredible how she rose all the way to the rank of an earl with her power. Arsha asked the maid if she wished to say something to her, and the maid, shuddering, asked if she may ask her a question if she doesn't mind, to which she replied that as long as she can answer it. The maid asked her if Adrian fires the castle's managers, and she replied that Adrian is a good person and he absolutely hates it when others have to suffer because of him. However, Adrian is cold to those whom he deems his enemies and asked the maid if she is, by chance, Adrian's enemy. The maid fearfully looked down because of her gaze and replied, of course not, so Arsha smiled and told her that if that was so, it was fine. Then the maid barged out of Arsha's room, making Adrian, who was outside, confused. She fearfully looked at him and ran away while apologizing to him and Arsha, telling him that he had arrived. He asked Arsha why the maid was acting like that because she seemed terrified. But Arsha replied that she didn't know. That day, a rumor spread that Adrian never forgets favors and spite, and that Arsha hates people who look down on her lover. Lopez awkwardly asked him if they could really follow him to the royal castle, making him confused and asked Lopez what he was talking about. Lopez replied that it is just that Eric and he are still lacking. Then he remembered swearing that when the war against the Croissant Empire was in full swing, Besides leveling up in the game, there was one thing he was preoccupied with: discovering talents with great potential using his magic glasses. Eric calmly told Lopez that he didn't think Adrian would summon them for no reason, and that Adrian must have a plan. Adrian explained that he called them because he wanted to give them a little more experience. Currently, there are 4 vanguards who act as escorts, along with Lopez and Eric, who are members of the Institute for Gifted Talents. They are heading to the royal castle to be investigated by the Audit and Inspection Board for nobles. He told them that they would probably see many nobles in the royal castle today, and if they were lucky, they might even be able to see the royal family. So they should pay close attention to the individuals leading that country. It's what they have to do today. Lopez shyly replied that he would do his best, making Adrian notice that if Lopez wanted to rise up in the future, he must learn to be a little bolder. The knight informed them that they had arrived at the teleportation gate, and Adrian told the knight to depart immediately, to which the knight obeyed. They departed to the place with huge buildings. Lopez was amazed to see it, but he just silently looked out the window and knew that they had arrived at the capital of Reinhardt's kingdom, Lionel. A moment later, they were met by the maids, who were amazed to see him, with people telling him that he looked much better in person. In the royal administrative building, the nobles were cheering for him and Arsha. The man told him that they both were very popular, but he just shrugged it off, saying the media hyped them too much. The man mentioned how crazy things had been lately because of them, making him notice that it wasn't crazy in a good way. The man informed him that, as expected, the major power class didn't like it, but he was famous among the non-inherited nobles, having earned his place through his own work. The man's name is Baron Harris Walker, a high-ranking administrator and a noble inspector leader. Baron possesses exceptional intelligence, high administrative power, strong leadership abilities, and a high learning ability. His defining trait is integrity as a leader, and his relationships with others are generally friendly and neutral. Currently, he feels mentally exhausted and skeptical, wondering why he possesses 4 high-end talents and the integrity leader trait. He called Baron, who immediately bowed and apologized for talking too much. Adrian, however, handed Baron his card, telling him that it wasn't about his chatter and insisted he take the card. Baron asked why he was being given the card and whether it wasn't his own. Adrian explained that when he becomes a Viscount, he plans to appoint a talented administrator to manage his territory. If Baron is interested, he should call him, as he'll ensure he receives the best treatment. This left Baron stunned and confused. A few minutes later, Baron informed them that they had arrived at investigation room number 1. He explained that only Adrian and Arsha were allowed in that room, and the inspection would take around 2 to 3 hours. He suggested that their servants wait in the resting lobby. Adrian then told Billiam and his scholars that he preferred they go on a tour around the area, and he would let them know when he was done. He also offered a generous allowance of 3 million loot. Lopez asked if he was sure, and he reassured them, stating that it was just a perfunctory inspection, so he'd be fine. Billiam, his scholars, and the vanguard saluted him and wished him to stay safe. He agreed and told them to ensure that everyone had a good time as well. Baron whispered to him, cautioning him to be careful, as he wasn't certain about what might transpire inside. The chief inspector was not pleased with him, and this had raised Baron's concerns. He thanked Baron for the information and opened the door, pondering that he could always leave the county if problems arose. Inside, they were greeted by 4 men, and he was taken aback when he recognized one of them. This was the reason Baron had been worried. The group included Noble Chief Inspector Douglas Hamilton and the second prince, who was also the Royal Guard's number 2 commander, and an aura master named Luke Wynn Reinhardt. He could understand why the chief inspector was present, but he wondered why the second in line for the throne was sitting in front of him. He bowed to Luke Wynn and expressed his honor in meeting the commander of the Royal Guards. Luke Wynn enthusiastically responded, noting that he noticed Adrian right away, and acknowledged his status as an arch-wizard. However, Adrian pointed out that he'd be quite the spy if he didn't recognize Luke Wynn's face, living in the same country. Luke Wynn allowed him to raise his head, and the system displayed Luke Wynn's affiliations: Reinhardt Royalty, Second Prince, and number 2 Commander of the Royal Guard. His talents included a very high level of aura mastery, high physical strength, and medium levels of learning ability, intelligence, leadership, and administrative skills. His traits were enhanced muscles and an arrogant leader. His relationships were marked as interested and hostile, and his current status was observing and curious. Adrian noticed that Luke Wynn's stats were high, as expected from an aura master, but not as high as his fame. He speculated that Luke Wynn probably had an aura master as his teacher and had consumed expensive elixirs and medicines regularly. Luke Wynn informed him that he would be leading the investigation and asked if that was acceptable to Adrian. Adrian responded that he would follow whatever the noble inspection decided. Douglas agreed to proceed, announcing that the investigation would be conducted by Prince Luke Win, to which Adrian replied with a yes. He observed Luke Win, who appeared uncomfortable, prompting Adrian to wonder if Luke Win was uneasy due to his request. Adrian apologized for his impoliteness and explained that he had questioned Luke Win's decision. However, Luke Win assured him not to worry about it, for which Adrian expressed his gratitude. After they both took their seats, the investigation began. Adrian recognized that there was nothing particularly unusual about the investigation. Even if they held something against him, he had a solid alibi. Luke Win acknowledged that there seemed to be no other solution for Adrian's situation. Still, Douglas pointed out that it had caused one-sided damage to the Raven Margrave's side. Luke Win countered that it was described as an ambush, but it was clearly a territorial dispute. He added that if a war had started, there could be unexpected collateral damage. Luke Win then asked Douglas if he believed that Adrian had completely demolished the Raven Margrave. Douglas apologized and explained that he had misspoke, and he was worried because his relationship with Luke Win was hostile. However, he thought that Luke Win appeared to be a fair person. Luke Win announced that there was no reason to continue the investigation because there was nothing to uncover. However, Douglas whispered to Luke Win that the Raven Margrave was a significant force on their side. Adrian could hear Douglas clearly. He noticed that the majority of the noble inspectors stood behind Luke Win, with some people representing Raven Margrave's side. This led him to speculate that Luke Win's strained relationship with him might be due to the influence of people around him, rather than his own choice. His initial impression of Luke Win was unfavorable, but he suspected that Luke Win was actually a good person. Luke Win asked Douglas if he was expecting him to be unreasonable and told him to stop because the matter was settled. Then Luke Win called Adrian, who responded, and Luke Win expressed his preference for straightforward discussions, without loopholes. Adrian encouraged him to proceed. Luke Win then explained that he was in competition with his brother for the crown, and they were evenly matched. However, things changed, especially after Adrian's involvement with Raven Margrave, one of his primary supporters. He, however, had refused the support. Adrian apologized to Luke Win for this, but Luke Win assured him that he wasn't blaming him, and it was all Raven's fault. He mentioned that if Adrian had joined his brother's side, things could have taken a turn for the worse, and that was why he was reaching out before his brother did, revealing Luke Win's true motives for participating in the investigation. The first prince was already the crown prince, but there was a certain unease because the second prince had become an aura master. Despite being evenly matched, Adrian wondered how the second prince had reached such a position when the first prince had the rightful heritage and status in his favor. He knew that Raven's army had been significantly reduced, but it wasn't enough to create a significant impact. The problem was him and Arsha, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Not only did they possess exceptional individual abilities, but they also had substantial funds, making them potential game changers capable of disrupting the balance. He recognized that there was no advantage in becoming embroiled in political warfare. Adrian told Luke Win that he wasn't prepared to enter the political arena, especially since he hadn't acquired his title yet. However, Luke Win explained that this was precisely why it mattered more. He told Adrian that if he joined his side, he would value his status as an archwizard and his contributions in the previous war. He also promised to support him in obtaining the Marquis title, making Adrian surprised. Adrian inquired if it was really possible, to which Luke Win replied that it wasn't easy but he could make it happen. Luke Win also mentioned that Adrian's Viscounty, Marinkov, sounded appealing. Adrian intended to remain neutral, but Luke Win's offer was incredibly tempting. He expressed his surprise at the generous offer and asked if he was truly worth that much to Luke Win. Luke Win replied that he was worth more than Adrian thought and mentioned the beautiful aura master by his side, Arsha. Luke Win smiled as he gazed at Arsha, leaving Adrian silently disappointed. Adrian requested some time to think it through, but Luke Win remarked that wizards were known for their caution, especially those who had spent most of their lives hidden. Adrian realized that it wasn't just caution, he simply didn't like Luke Win's behavior. Luke Win offered a week for him to consider, to which Adrian expressed his gratitude. Facing each other, Luke Win asked Adrian if he believed that the crown should go to someone with the right abilities while extending his hand. Adrian accepted it, and Luke Win emphasized that if the crown prince ascended, the Reinhardt kingdom would decline. He urged Adrian to think about the country's future as a noble, to which Adrian agreed to take his words to heart. Luke Win then turned to Arsha, shook her hand, and expressed his surprise at her smaller stature, adding that it was almost surprising that she was an aura master. Arsha thanked him, and Luke Win suggested they might duel later, as he had never seen a female aura master. Arsha gladly accepted, while Adrian observed their interaction. As Luke Win began to leave, he told Arsha that she seemed very emotionless and that he would see her next time. Douglas, walking behind Adrian, advised Adrian to stop thinking and simply accept the offer, as Luke Wynn was not accustomed to rejection. They exited the room, and Adrian thought that Luke Wynn had merely gone through the motions and was dragging out the process. He contemplated whether to return or explore further. He asked Arsha if she was hungry, to which she replied that she wasn't really hungry, but she had a strong craving for food at the moment, leaving Adrian to ponder if it wasn't the same thing. He then recalled Luke Wynn shaking Arsha's hand while making a joke about a poop touching her hands and suggested that they wash their hands. Arsha mentioned that Luke Wynn had also touched her left shoulder. Adrian proposed that they should have a meal since they were already out, mentioning that he knew a few restaurants in the area, when someone from behind addressed them. A man mentioned that it was nice and revealed that he also knew many restaurants. Another man with a handsome face waved hello at them. He was initially confused, looking at the man who appeared to be an overpowered when he opened his eyes type of guy. To his shock, he realized that the man was none other than the first Prince Michael van Reinhardt, a 5th Circle High Wizard. Michael's affiliations included Reinhardt's First Prince and the Reinhardt Kingdom Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His talents were remarkably high, with very high intelligence, learning skill, and administration, and high command and political abilities. On the other hand, his mana, aura, and physical abilities were low. His traits included photographic memory and conductor of stratagem, and his relationships were marked as curious and neutral. At the moment, he was using a face alteration spell, leaving Adrian astounded by his capabilities. Adrian noticed that the first prince was moving around, seemingly unnoticed by others. He wondered if the lack of attention was due to the face alteration spell. Michael commented that they made quite the pair as an archwizard and an aura master. However, he speculated that the spell didn't work on those who weren't easily fooled, such as Michael's brother. Michael's behavior didn't fit the typical image of a first prince. Adrian realized that he couldn't afford to make an enemy out of someone like Michael, so he inquired if they could expect fine dining. Michael agreed and told them to follow him as he would guide them to the place. They followed Michael, and Adrian couldn't help but notice that Michael's stats seemed too exceptional for a human. His talents were heavily skewed toward politics and administration. He had never seen a person with 3 very high talents, except for Arsha, but Michael's overall stats exceeded Arsha's. Arsha's stats weren't particularly high because they were focused on her sword skills. However, the first Prince Michael possessed 2 high-grade talents in addition to his 3 very high-grade talents. Despite having low mana, he had managed to become a high wizard with his wisdom. Michael noticed Adrian staring and remarked that he seemed to have many questions about him. Adrian commented that Michael was a more mysterious person than his younger brother, wondering how someone like Michael could remain relatively unknown to the public. Michael pointed to the door, indicating it was the way. As they entered the room, Adrian noticed that it was a teleportation room and mentioned that he thought teleportation spells couldn't be used inside the castle due to the interruption barrier spell surrounding it. Michael asked if he didn't know and explained that there was an underground electric stone mine that sometimes clashed with mana, causing interruptions in teleport spells. Michael retrieved a device from his coat and clicked it, causing the interruption spell shielding the castle to slowly disappear. Adrian was shocked to see it vanish, and Michael informed them that it was time to go. They teleported, and Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that Michael was far from an ordinary person, leaving him to wonder who this mysterious individual truly was.